it's sort of arbitrary this year in terms of geography. Lindsay Leinert might be joining us. She's the parent connector that lives in Huntington Woods and kind of is in that area. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, you just froze
okay.
on.
I know. Like I said, I Zoom freezes me when I talk too much. I'm trying to like talk slowly even. So there's a PJ Library magazine that comes out like quarterly, and there were a whole bunch of stories recently on storytelling and how important that is. And I mean, it's a crutch of PJ Library really to pass down stories to our children and help, to next generations. So a way to sort of process this year, I wanted to help create some kind of tool and have some kind of expert, kind of give us other tools to work through this. So Lynn is our expert. She is a master marketer. She runs her own marketing and PR company. And she's done writing workshops and retreats that I've been a part of that are wonderful. And I thought that, it'd be great to hear from her. I am going to start Lynn already started recording, I believe. Yes. Fantastic. I am like not the most tech savvy millennial at all. So I'm going to pass it over to Lynn, and then I'll kind of just be in the background. Like if you've got any questions throughout, you can toss them in the chat, or you can just kind of unmute. We're a smaller group. So I'm going to toss it to Lynn to do our icebreaker, and then we'll kind of go around the Zoom and chat.
Well, I have lots of Jewish things in my house, and I just grabbed what was nearby my desk, and this feels really old. It's like a little siddur that in the front cover, my grandparents wrote a note to me for my bat mitzvah in a very long time ago, so I won't even say what year. But and I don't actually use it for services. Even before I was the age that I am, it's very small print. So it was like, how do I look at that? But I keep it close to me on a bookshelf because it just reminds me of them and that connection and through the generations.
All right, let's hear from Michelle.
Hello, I'm Michelle. My internet is being a little difficult. It's saying it's unstable. So whatever that means, hopefully you guys can hear me. I brought this piece that was made for me after my wedding. This is the glass that we smashed, during the ceremony. It's very special to me. I don't display it, so I'm actually like really excited that I got to take it out of the box because I have 2 small children and I'm scared that something bad will happen. But hopefully one day I can put it on display, and it's kind of just like a symbol of, what we left behind and what we kind of like brought into our relationship and what we've formed, I guess, anew. So
I like that.
Thanks.
All right, Mickey, you're up.
Okay, so I actually had 2 things nearby, but I'll go with this one. So this is a little silly, but I actually have my mezuzah right next to my bed. It's not where it belongs, obviously. And the reason it's there, and the scroll is there, everything's right here, is because right before COVID and the quarantine, we had someone here like doing something for the house, and they took like a big piece of furniture and knocked it off. And it is fine. It just needs to be put back up. And that requires like attention. And I haven't had like the time, the focus, anything to get this back up. And I just kind of keep passing it and going, I need to put our mezuzah back up, but I haven't yet. So I put it next to my bed. So hopefully, make time to make the time. So it's there. But I do love it. I can't wait to put it back up. So.
Big plans.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Beth, how about you?
I thought about running upstairs because that's where more of my stuff is, but I'm downstairs. Lately Sukkot has become a bigger holiday for us. Like we've started building a sukkah the last like 6 years, I think, something like that. We enjoy that. The kids really like putting it together. But so this year I'm on this website called Kosher on a Budget. Does anybody know about that? If you don't, sign up for it because there's good deals that you can get. Kosher on a Budget. I don't know if it's .com, but you can find it. But I got this like trivet runner. It's really long. But it looks like Jerusalem. And I really liked that. So I bought it for the sukkah, but I can use it year round. And I got one that was more general, so I could use it year round.
Hi, Abby. Make sure you're on mute. Thank you.
And then, I don't know. So I'm really excited to use it for Pesach, even though I bought it for Sukkot. So, so that's my Jewish item.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to Lindsay. What's your Jewish item that you want to share?
Well, everybody was getting such personal items. And here, like, I had Manischewitz potato pancake mix. So, because
Very timely.
this is the only item that like I've really found for Passover so far. My normal go-to stores had nothing except for that and chocolate covered matzah. And I was like, as great as that is, you know, I would be the one eating it. So it's not as meaningful as everybody else's, but yay, getting ready for Passover. Woo! Yay.
That's real. All right, I'm going to go to Lisa.
Unmute and video. Well, I found it, and yes, it was up in Simon's room, but I had my something Jewish. I mean, I don't know. Can you see it? I'll bring it over here. Was the little rabbi troll that it's been sitting on the desk that I use downstairs, and also because I'm working in the basement, I have Eric's diplomas on the wall from Hillel Day School and the Jewish Academy. So those are the extent of my Jewish items, other than the mezuzah somewhere on the walls.
Thank you. All right, Sarah.
Okay, so I have, these are my candlesticks from my wedding, and my grandparents gave them to me. So they're very important to me, and we use them every Friday night for Shabbat. So, yay.
Beautiful. All right, I'm going to share mine. Abby, if you have a chance, if you are able to, we're just going around giving quick 30-second spiels on some Jewish object that we want to share, just so we can say hi. So I grabbed this Passover Seder plate that my son made 2 Passovers ago now at the JCC preschool. It's sentimental because it's, it's one of those first projects, and we haven't gotten any of those projects. We're not doing preschool in person this year, or any school. And last year was sort of like right, before everything closed. So I'm like, now I'm extra holding on tight to things like this. Mm-hmm. So that is my object. All right. So I'm going to pass it back to Lynn. I think Abby will come in and out if she's available. She had a couple other meetings. Sure. So, all right, Lynn, it's all you.
All right. I'm going to share my screen, but feel free to ask questions, or I guess do the raise hand or the chat or something so we can keep track of it. But I love that you showed that, Julie, because I have 4 teenagers, and we have all of their preschool Passover projects from many years they were in paper grocery bags, which are getting kind of gross. But so we keep putting them in new bags each year, and we bring them out for the Seders, and they go through them as if it's like the first time every year, which is really fun. So I can't wait to see what your kids do in 10 years when they bring those out again. So just keep them somewhere because you'll use them a lot. So, all right. So hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. And I probably prepared way too much because I get really excited about storytelling and about Jewish identity. And then putting it all into the context of a pandemic year is like, oh my gosh, the words just started coming. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And hopefully it'll all come together. But please ask questions, jump in. I really want to make it interactive when we're here together. So here we go. All right. So I was thinking about, what are we going to talk about? So there's this pandemic year that we've been living through. We all have our stories and angles and lots of phases to those too. I don't know about you, but the way I was a year ago right now is very different than I am now. And there've been a lot of evolutions along that way. And, thank God, I've been lucky. My family's been healthy. We've been fortunate and privileged enough to be able to be at home and work. And I have older kids, so they're fairly independent with school, as much as it's not ideal for teenagers to be in school this way. But still, there's a lot that has been going on. And so I was really wondering if we could sort of start with a little bit of these questions, and you can maybe just pop some answers in the chat as they come to you. But, thinking about what will be our stories from this time, And how will we make sense of it? And so things that were really important a year ago may not be important now, but we want to remember them. And then in a year from now, will we look back and have a sort of a lesson that'll come out to us, or like a moral to the story? And are we going to try to remember everything, or are we going to try to forget some of it too? You know, there's just been so much. And so I'd love to hear if anybody has any quick thoughts off the top of their head, if you have any answers to these questions. Like, does something jump out at you, or are you not sure yet? You're still processing? Any thoughts?
I'll say that it'd be nice to forget judgment that people have based on decisions that people are making about for their own lives, about how they want to be with their children or with their families, or go to school or not go to school. Or it'd be nice to not remember all of the judgment.
Yeah. Thanks, Beth. That is really true. Anybody else?
We've really appreciated the time at home and the time to pause and not run around like we always did. I have 3 boys and we are at every sport. I mean, our Saturdays are basically like a million hours at flag football. And now we just, we enjoy them, or we have a play date outside and everything. I just feel everything is it's just calm.
Yeah.
And it's been really like delightful in some ways. And we've also been really fortunate that my husband works from home a couple of days and I am home with my kids, like schlepping them to whatever version of school is going on at the time.
Yeah.
But I was in a really bad place at one point and I was like, okay, well, I can't change anything. So I'm going to change my attitude. And I did. And I was looking through this and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I was thinking. So it's actually been a nice experience in the end. We've taken a lot of good things away from it.
Yeah. I just got chills when you said that, Sarah, because that is really like a reckoning in a way. And I know that in the beginning, all the fears came up for me, and I cried a lot in the beginning because I had a graduating senior, and I had a graduating 8th grader, and then I had 2 in between, and all these things that they had looked forward to, and all these things on the calendar. Like when I deleted them from my calendar, I was like, they took it better than I did. But now I've just been like, hey, we're all good. And I have another graduating senior this year, and she's definitely not enjoying this transition. But we played so many games. We made so many great meals. Like we went on hikes outside, and I really cherished that time with teens who probably wouldn't have spent that time with me if things had been different. So true. So true. Anybody else?
I think mine is pretty similar to what was said, but I think it's kind of double-edged because the forced togetherness definitely created some like stress and just like we're spending way too much time together. But then we also like got very creative about like spending time together, and it was just like we have to find ways to like enjoy the fact that we can't go to our normal places and we can't, do the things we normally did. So we, form new traditions like having dance parties or like family reading time, or we do like, special smoothie nights and, just like silly little things that just like kind of kept the week moving was really helpful, and I think something that I definitely will want to remember.
Yeah. And I think also a question to ask yourselves and just ponder after tonight is, will I be a different parent because of this? Will my family be changed for the better maybe? And, maybe we'll go back to some of the things that we did, and we might get really busy again at some point and just sort of fall into that pace. But what will you keep? What will you really ardently try to hold on to because it was such a valuable lesson? It sort of like showed you another way. So something to think about. Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate all that heartfelt participation. Thank you so much. So I want to sort of propose that we sort of go through this conversation with the analogy of the whole put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on your children on a plane, which hopefully we never ever have to do, but it's a good metaphor. So when we're talking about what stories we're going to tell and how we're going to make sense of this, we have to make sense of it for ourselves before we can even begin to speak about it for our children. And that's really hard when we're going through it, because maybe we haven't made sense, or maybe we've had different meanings come about at different points. And then we have to backtrack and say something different. And our children are always watching and they're listening. even when we're not speaking. And so I think it's really important to sort of ask ourselves these really deep questions, give ourselves some space to look for answers, and give simple answers to our kids, or just be with them while we're trying to make sense of it. You know, that we don't have to have all the answers at any point of parenting, but certainly not when we have these big cataclysmic things happening in the world. And so, so thinking about that, like being brave enough to give yourself permission to say, I don't know how to make sense of it right now, so I'm not going to, so we're going to go play outside, you know, or whatever it is. And just sort of, you know, taking that as your guidance, is something to think about. So I just want to tell you really quickly who I am. I've given you a little bit of info, but as Julie said, I have a marketing and public relations company, which came on the heels of the 2007-2008 economic crash, when I was a journalist before that. And everything was changing in journalism. So I got really scrappy and started a company. My kids were 2, 4, and 6 when all that happened. And I became a single mom at the same time. And so I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to support the kids? And so I started a business, which thankfully has been successful. I also teach college English, which I've taught for about 20 years at University of Detroit Mercy. And I'm still a writer. I have a lot of books out. And this year I've been writing a lot of essays, a lot of poems. I did a poem last year about Passover and about how when the plagues came again, and sort of all the metaphor of the plagues and the pandemic and all these things. And I do a podcast, so Make Meaning Podcast. Check it out. It's on all the platforms. And I'm actually doing an episode coming up with my husband and a friend who is a divorce attorney about what the pandemic has done for relationships. So our story is that we love each other even more, and we've had so much more fun over the past year. But her story is that she has a lot of new clients. So it'll be an interesting episode, which I'm happy to share. And you can reach me at any of those places, and feel free to if there's anything you want to keep talking about after tonight. Okay, so now we're looking at Passover coming. We're looking at storytelling. Passover is the storytelling holiday, although a lot of our holidays really are. And so I was really playing with that. Like, you asked me to talk about words and stories, and I probably will never shut up. So I was really digging into it, and I was thinking, you know, how can we understand this? And one thing I wanted to start with, just to mention, is that one of the traditions that I took on in Passover when I became a single mom. So my ex-husband is Orthodox and I'm conservative. And I was sort of on my own with a lot of pressure from the other side, doing big, huge late night seders. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to compete with that? Which I don't. But you know, how do we create our own traditions? And so a rabbi that I'm very close with had said to me at one point that they always did their seders for the children. So this was an Orthodox rabbi who has people over every Shabbat, huge tables open, but Passover, they don't, and they just make it about their kids. Their kids are all grown now, but at the time when they were little, they did the Seder for the children to make sense for them. And so I decided to take that direction and start to create traditions for my kids. And like I said, Julie, we pull out all their preschool projects and all these things that they've made over the years. And my seders have grown increasingly longer because I tailor it to them. So in the beginning, we do as much as they could take, and when they got wiggly, and you know, it was done. And I was okay with that. And I was giving myself permission to create new stories and new traditions. And over the years, one of the things we've done is we started collecting Haggadot. Every year I would buy a new one. We have boxes and boxes now, so I've stopped buying them because we have no more room. But everybody has the same Haggadah to look at, but then they all pick another. And then everybody can offer something that they find in theirs that's really cool. So we have the Harry Potter and the comic book one and the feminist one and all the different ones. And it's really become great. And the seders have grown as the children have grown. And so that really spoke to me when I was thinking of this concept of our tradition of generation to generation. So I showed you the siddur that my grandparents gave me at my bat mitzvah, and I'm thinking about all the traditions handed down to me, and now it's my turn to do that and create stories that will be memories for my children as well. And so I wonder if anybody has thoughts about any like overarching themes or lessons that you think come from our Jewish stories. They can be Passover stories, they can be others, but are there sort of like overarching themes, which a hint on the next slide. I have my suggestions, but I want to hear from you guys first and think about, like, are there metaphors or lessons or takeaways from the perennial Jewish stories that we always tell and tell again? Any thoughts? Any themes?
I always like the theme of, I mean, there's so many. I have, whatever, I've a lot, but bravery. And just, you know, I'm always trying to instill in my children that being brave is approaching something hard and doing it anyway. And I think there are so many examples of that
Yeah.
in our stories.
That's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else? Any other themes that you think come up again and again? Yeah.
I would say probably resilience. So dealing with like tragedy and war and difficult situations, and then kind of coming out on the other side and surviving and thriving.
Yep. Love it.
I was going to say survival. Michelle stole that, but it was like she didn't steal it. I tried to take it, but I was going to say survival, like being able to, I run Sisterhood Shabbat at Beth Shalom every year, and I do the Devar Torah every year for it, and I'm always talking about survival and how we've lasted so long, and we've always made it through, and we always find a way to get to the other side, and they can't tear us down, and so on and so forth. And I think that's a really big one.
Awesome. Love it. Anything else? All right, well, let's show you me going a little crazy here. So here are all the themes that I was like, ooh, I'm having fun with this. What are the themes? And there are so many, you know, for all the holidays. And one of the things that occurred to me was that every single year, not just Passover, but like every holiday, it's as if we're experiencing it for the first time. But especially Passover, we're supposed to feel like we are leaving Egypt, as if, you know, it hasn't happened last year and it's not going to happen next year. And we recreate this. And I wonder how we can relate that to what's going on now. We're going through a lot of things for the first time. So we've been doing this our whole lives. We have great practice at this. And so, you know, how do we find ourselves in any of these themes that are always in our favorite stories, in our ancestry, in how we live daily life? You know, it's about repetition. I mean, if we know the same prayers, we wake up, we say the same things every day, but it's supposed to be new each time. And so how can we be new from emerging from a new time into what we're thinking is going to be normal, but it's going to be totally different. We're going to recreate it in some way. And we're supposed to feel that sense of, I guess, you know, revolution, of redemption after Passover. We're supposed to be done with 8 days of eating matzah, not eating chametz, and really like changing ourselves. And then we go back to eating pasta and we're like, oh, it's fine. But are we changed? Are we changed by all of this? So think about some of these themes as we get into our writing. So let's take pen and paper. You've heard a lot from me and you'll hear some more, but I think let's do like a minute or two for each one. So I'll time it and I put them up here on the screen, but let's do one at a time. So the first question is, what do you want to say but have been afraid to about the past year? So we'll just, whatever comes to mind, no judging. You don't have to share it. You can if you want to. So what do you want to say but have been afraid to about the past year? Okay, let's do question 2. What questions do your children ask about this time, or have they asked about this time? And then write a little bit about how you feel if you have no answers to their questions. How does that make you feel? And then finally, and this does not have to relate to the pandemic, but what questions are you afraid to ask? So if I went too fast and you want to jot down anything from any of the earlier questions, take the next 30 seconds or so to gather all your thoughts. So I'd love to hear from you. You don't have to share anything you wrote. You can if you want to, um, but I'd love to hear what the experience was like, what it felt like, how any of these prompts felt, anything that just sort of came up for you or occurred to you. And if you do want to share, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll share that I love prompts because I like structure and I like to have a guided thing to answer to help formulate my thoughts. Um, so I think a lot of thoughts were swirling in my head that have been, and I actually got to like write it down just now. And a lot of it has already been, like processing, but to ask, some direct questions, I'm like, oh, that's what comes to mind now too. It's not wasn't a new thought for me, a lot of the answers.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Anyone else?
Well, being on the other side and towards the the caring for the grandkid side, our philosophy is how can we help? with the little ones. So they've been a lot of fun and helped things through the pandemic. It's great looking at things through their eyes.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, actually the question, what the free write, what questions do your children ask about this time? I smiled because pretty much the only question is, when will the virus be over?
Ah,
And it's just sweet, and and it's not particularly loaded. I mean, I could make it loaded, but it's just, okay, when's it gonna be over? We could do other things.
since I know that you're
Right.
such a fantastic writer, Julie, I would say that I would take that question and build an essay out of it, because I think you could come up with so many amazing things from that, you know. And that is something that I'll mention. I said I'm a writer. I always have been, and over the past 14 years of working in marketing, I've sort of gotten away from it and really gotten busy working for a living, and I missed that part of myself. And so I gave myself permission, as everything changed in the past year, to get back to my writing. And then I really committed 2021 to, like, in earnest working on um, focusing more on being a writer that I always knew myself as. And it's helped me to process through a lot of these confusing emotions. So whether you write anyway, and that's something you love to do, or you just want it as an exercise to clear your head, it's a great way to start the day or finish the day. And it's something to think about, just even jotting down things your kids say or things you noticed, or ranting because you've just had it. It's been a day. It can be really cathartic. So just an option. Lindsay, were you going to say something? I thought I saw that you might be jumping in.
Oh, just something funny, because something that my kids are really concerned about right now is when Chuck E. Cheese will be open. So I think that's the question that I get asked a lot. Is it still open? Are our tickets still good? And so, and of all the things, I'm like, really, seriously, that's what you're worried about? But okay.
And the problem is Chuck E. Cheese was gross before.
Yeah.
So,
I hope it doesn't open again,
Yeah.
but
Oh my gosh, there's so much to write about here. You guys are amazing. Like, all these things could just be great insights, right? To the world we live in. Oh my goodness. Sarah, did you want to say something?
I think the thing that I have been afraid to say is I think things are going better now than they were before.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my kids know how to clean a house now.
Yep.
We did get our cleaning person back, but we didn't have her for a very long time. And, my kids know how to, they have all of these life skills, which I had planned on teaching them, but didn't get around to doing. And I even made a list in my phone of life skills that I wanted to teach my kids in December before this all happened. And I hadn't done it. And then all of a sudden I had an opportunity because my kids were in my face and we had a house that needed cleaning. And even my 6-year-old said to me today, I know how to wash strawberries and I know how to cut the top off them and I know how to wash an orange. I know how to peel it. And he gave me all of these things that he can do now that he couldn't do before.
Wow.
So I'm blown away by the information that my children have absorbed this year and can now demonstrate.
Yeah. Are you by any chance a writer, Sarah?
I am not a writer. I was a teacher, but I'm not a writer.
Because everything you just said is like a perfect poem. It's amazing. It's so visual and tactile and representative of such an important part of this time.
I taught first grade. So I think that's kind of where my, my center always comes from there.
Yeah. Awesome. That is so cool.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone else want to share what they wrote or how it felt?
I mean, I think I had kind of the opposite experience of Julie, because she said all this stuff has been in my head. I feel like I've been kind of moving through it too much to even think about it much. So having the questions posed, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that that's something I was thinking about. So I feel like the prompts really, like Julie said, have structure. So they kind of guided me to some actual insights that I maybe didn't even know I had in me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
great. Thank
I
you.
also want to put out there, I think my kids are at a really, really good age right now because my kids are 6, 11, and 14. And I think the ones with the little ones at home are having the hardest time. So I just want to put it out there and like major props to you guys. And I've realized that my kids are at such a good age and I feel very, very lucky because I know the toddlers at home are so hard.
No, it's true. And there are good and bad to every age during a situation like this, for sure. Beth, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say I have 3 boys also. They are 7, 5, and 2 on this Thursday, which is crazy. Can you believe that, Michelle? He's going to be 2 on Thursday. Our kids are like 2 months and 1 day apart or something like that.
Very close,
But
yeah.
anyway, the I can't even believe it. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that my 7-year-old is the one who asks the most questions. He's like extremely talkative. And what he wants to know, one of his main questions, besides when will it be over and when will we be able to see people like normal again, even though he's very understanding of the need to not be near people, is when can we go back to Saginaw and Frankenmuth? We went there last year in February, like a month before this all happened. And we stayed in a hotel for one night. We went to the Mid-Michigan Children's Museum. We went to Zender's for brunch. And all he talks about is he like writes like stories in his first grade class for his teacher about what we did then and how he wants to go back. So he wants to know, when can we go back to those places? And so it's just really, and he knows that we don't really have an answer, that we're planning, but we can't give him a definite date. But I just kind of feel a little bit unfocused, I guess would be the word, when I don't know how to answer, because I just don't know the answer. And he'll sometimes say like, are you being true? Like, instead of, are you like telling the truth? Are you being true? And I'm like, I'm telling you everything I know. Like, that's all I can do. But he really wants to know like facts, and I just can't give them to him. And it hurts to not be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Beth, thank you for bravely sharing. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Are you being true? Oh, isn't that beautiful?
It was actually my favorite prompt was the how do you feel when you don't have answers? Because I feel like I was like that for most of this year, because I didn't know. But I've finally come to a place where I'm like, that's actually a really good opportunity to just be completely vulnerable and say like, yeah, I don't know. Like, you don't know. I don't know. It's just a hard place to be. We're all doing this together and it's all new. And I mean, not that that necessarily suffices as an answer, but I just realized like that can be enough, because we just like, I don't know, making things up, it just feels like it's inauthentic to me to just be like, no, we don't know. It is a hard place to be, and like let those feelings, let that come out in like a safe space.
Yeah, really true. And it's interesting too, because as we're approaching Passover, has anybody ever felt like the answer and all the time spent on the 4 children and how they answer questions is really unsatisfying? Like, I don't understand. Every year I look at this and I'm like, this is not answering anything. This is not like, maybe there's something in that. I don't know. Like, it's sort of talking around the answering or something, but that vulnerability and actually making peace with the fact that we don't know, and even when we think we do, maybe we don't, could be a great lesson for us and for our kids, something to think about. So feel free to take a screenshot of these prompts if you want to play with them later. Also, I'm sure Julie will make the recording available if you want to take a look at it again. So anyway, thank you everybody for participating. I appreciate that. So I think that what I'm hoping to transmit in this whole conversation is that once you can figure out what is meaningful to you, I think you can make sense of a lot of things for your kids. And until we can do that, until we can have either permission to not know, or we can find our own answers, I just don't know how we can be a North Star for them, or maybe just by being honest and human and not complete, and that is the being true, Beth, right? Then maybe that's the best lesson for them as well. So they really do pay attention and listen and then mimic what we're doing, even when we don't know we're doing it. And I remember when one of my kids was in kindergarten, there was actually a bullying incident, which I was like shocked that young it was happening. And as a mom, I was trying to figure out, what's going on here? How could a 5-year-old be a bully? Like they don't know that. And it occurred to me that maybe they're seeing that, probably they're seeing that at home or in another situation, and they're enacting what they're seeing. And that was a really powerful lesson for me as a mom and as a person. It didn't help my daughter to hear that kind of an explanation, but it really helped for me to make sense of the power of how we show up for other people and how that impacts them. And that just ripples out like the pebble in the water. So as we're coming close to Passover, I thought I'd bring this back to Torah, which is all stories. And we can interpret them in different ways based on where we are in life, where we are in the life cycle and the year, in situations and circumstances. And I really thought about this because this is a conversation I have with my kids' dad all the time. And he wants them to be very religious, and I have different opinions, but I want them to love being Jewish. And sometimes they don't even do that because they're teenagers, and it's like, okay, what do we do about that? And I just remember, I love this quote from the Kotzker Rebbe because it starts here. Like, if I'm not walking the walk, I cannot expect them to. And so, it's really hard to be like, oh, just do as I say, not as I do. But I have to stand up, and I have to have my own purpose and my own path. So it's on us. So I wanted to ask you guys if there's any room in the Passover story to relate it to the past year. Would that be sort of a shakeup a little bit and a new way of approaching the Passover story and the Seder to put in context of what we've experienced in the past year to what our ancestors experienced at any point on their journey? I think that it can be a little dangerous when we use terms like slavery in this day and age with everything we've gone through and trying to approximate other experiences of slavery with our privileged lives, and we are in a lot of ways. But I think if we can try to empathize or even just understand in some way what, any little lesson from our experiences to how people in true dire straits, in true enslavement, in true danger have experienced, then don't we come out of this better? Is there room in this story to build a kind of compassion that we didn't have before and bring it to the Passover Seder? Are these questions maybe we could ask when we're having this conversation with our kids in a few weeks? Just an idea, like a little addendum to the Haggadah, which actually some families do. They have a sort of a family Haggadah that they add to every year. And then they look back and say, oh, this was 3 years ago. And this was, one thing that my family does is they have these big oversized paper Haggadahs, and whichever one you have, you sign your name and the date in the front cover. And so it starts to go longer and longer, and you see who held this last year, who held this 2 years ago. And of course, this year and last year will be missing from that front cover, right? So think about that. Think about if there's something we can correlate or include. Julie?
Yeah, Lynn, I think it's interesting because I believe this is the first Jewish holiday where we will have cycled through the full year and repeat, because I think it was right after Purim last year.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to think about where we were a year ago in sort of like all of the questions and the unknowns and like the beginning of the trauma and how, what and how things have changed in just the year. I know it's like a little bit more than a year with the Jewish calendar, but I didn't even think about that until, you talked through it, and like thinking about, do we even want to read the stories from this time? I feel like we're still living some of that trauma. So like, we're not even ready to watch TV shows that are in real time and like, have people wearing masks on TV. So it's interesting to think about how much we want to be put back into last year's Passover space and what that'll be like.
It's a really good point. Beth, I'll get to you in just one second. One thing I want to just say about that, Julie, that's interesting is if we took a step back and we actually thought about what the Passover story is, you know, all of the horrible atrocities that the Israelites faced in Egypt and the incredible turmoil and tumult of having to leave and the plagues, like we talk about this as like a joyful little, oh, these are, you know, we have little plastic frogs on our table that we like flip all across the table every year and they end up in somebody's soup. And, you know, it's a fun gathering of family, but this is a horrific story. So we're living through a horrific story. Think about that, because we can feel it and we can feel the tears and the horribleness and the fear. I don't know that I ever felt that with the Passover story. And maybe I should, right? Or maybe we should bring levity. I don't know, but they're questions worth asking. Beth.
I was just going to say, to piggyback on what Julie was saying, that I know that based in the Jewish calendar, it's been more than a year since Purim. But based in the Gregorian calendar, today is 1 year since Erev Purim. It's the last time I was in shul, which is just very sad to me because I'm very involved. I mean, I'm on the top of the board, and I'm the programming team chair. I mean, I'm very, very involved. And so it's very strange to not be there. And like tomorrow will be a year since the last time my booby was in our house to like visit with the kids, like in the house. And all these things are just like kind of coming. I thought it was very interesting that today was like the day we're doing this, in that it has been a year. Again, I know in the Gregorian calendar, but still, since it all like kind of came about, and last time I really went anywhere and did anything. So.
And there could be a lot to write about. Yeah, just to sort of put down your feelings. Like, just, you don't know. You may want to come back to them. You may never want to look at that page again, but it could be really powerful to write that down. You know, actually last year we were ready to go to our synagogue for Purim. We're members of Beth Am, and I was like, I don't know what I'm reading in the papers, like what's happening in New York, and we didn't go. And that was really interesting too, because that's when everything started to sort of unfold. Yeah, interesting. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
We didn't go to our Purim
Oh, I'm
carnival
sorry.
either.
Oh, sorry. How about Mickey and then Sarah?
Yeah, you go.
Oh, sorry, Sarah. Are you sure? I was just going to say, you know, I'm sort of struck with, you know, now, Julie, when you were saying, yeah, like we're sort of, you know, doing another lap now we're having, like, I'm seeing people sort of start to have like their second COVID birthday and this, and now I'm saying, okay, right, like, right, our second COVID holiday with Passover. And I feel like with what's feels interesting and different to me is a year ago when we planned a Zoom Seder with our family, how uncomfortable and sort of foreign that felt, even though, you know, it was kind of like, it was at least something, at least, you know, grateful that we were some way to connect. It still felt there was an emptiness, right? Just because you couldn't physically be together. And I do feel like there's been a shift in me over this past year that I do feel able to connect with other humans through Zoom. I don't know why. I don't know what changed. And maybe it's just because as humans, we need it so badly that like, we'll take what we can get. I don't know. Yeah. But you know, and I don't even know what Passover will look like this year yet. We're just starting to talk about it. But anyway, it's weird how that shifted and I didn't really expect it to. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah?
I was just going to say that we were supposed to go to our Purim Carnival last year, and my older one was supposed to help work it, and my dad always helps with the brotherhood, and I am a germaphobe person to begin with. So I was like, we're not going to that. That's crazy. No way. And so we canceled that. And my son is turning 7 on March 23rd. And I had to decide if I was going to cancel his birthday party. And I obviously did. And he didn't get any of the drive-bys. He got nothing because, you know, his birthday was like the beginning of the pandemic. And so now we're like, oh, well, what are we going to do for his birthday? Oh, I could have a couple of his friends in the backyard and I could actually do something. Because I feel like we're coming out of it a little bit, but I really think it's the knowledge that we have gained from the beginning to now. Now I'm not afraid to have kids in my backyard in masks.
Yeah.
Or before we didn't, we just like, you know, stayed home and, you know, we didn't even want to stick a foot out the front door for, you know, for months and months. And at least I feel like we are armed with knowledge now that we didn't know before, you know? And so anytime my kids are with friends, they're in masks just so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like at least we know that, you know, what to do and how to arm ourselves.
Think about that, Sarah. That's a really important point. Like now we know.
Mhm.
And a lot of the fear a year ago was from not knowing.
Mhm.
How did, you know, and we're talking about Passover here. How did the Jews in Egypt go forward? They didn't know anything. You know, I always think about, you know, parting the sea, and I love the metaphor of it. Like, you know, they had to step a foot into the sea and hope God was going to open it for them, you know, and so they just had to have that trust and go without knowing. That's terrifying. I mean, that's just, when do we ever do that? You know, something really interesting to think about. And we only know today what we know today. You know, I think about that with modern medicine all the time. Like we know so much now, and last year or 10 years ago, we knew so much less, but next year we're going to know so much more. So interestingly, last year's Passover Seder was my kids and us at, you know, at home. And I didn't really want to be on Zoom. It just was too chaotic for me to do that. And this year my mom is coming because she's been vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. My husband will be by then. And so we feel like it's okay for us to do that. And that's so exciting. But I don't even think we'll have a second Seder because I feel like we just don't have that energy because there'll be nobody. So that is interesting. So I thought that we could also think about some of those tactile descriptions, and Sarah, you mentioned the strawberries, and I really loved that. But this is something that I talk about in Julie, indulge me a minute here, in a lot of my Make Meaning seminars, about this concept of love and this concept of satisfaction and how we've defined things in the past. And maybe we'll define things differently going forward, which is something we've talked about. But you know, we actually never know what tomorrow is going to bring, and yesterday's already done. But I know that I plan on tomorrow and next year and 10 years from now as if I know what's going to happen. And I expect it to. And a lot of the disappointments over the last year have been because we've wanted certain outcomes that we just couldn't have. Or we were so used to certain ways of doing things and they just stopped. And I feel like one of the things that I've gained from this is a remembrance that I need to be present. I need to live in the moment. And so, you know, when my kids were making meals for us, it was like we stopped working in the middle of the day because we were all home, and we sat at the table and we tasted what they made, or we smelled the scent of things cooking. Young children know this. This is how they live. Everything is tactile. It's immediate. There is no sense of tomorrow or before. It's all right now. And what would happen if we tried to get back there? You know, something to think about. The other thing that I like to talk about a lot is the definition of the word love. And one of the ways that in the modern world we know love is in preferential attachment. I choose you, I want you, you choose me. It's a very personal and attachment focused emotion. But I've learned over the years that a different definition of love could be universal understanding. I can be in your shoes. I can try to feel what you're feeling. And then we love very differently. And so maybe the way that we start to love this new way of being is just simply by stepping back and observing and taking it in and saying, oh, okay, that's interesting, instead of having some attachment to an outcome or a preference. And I forget who said it, but earlier somebody said, I think
Beth.
Sarah,
It
oh,
was
Beth,
Beth. Right
about
letting go of judgment.
letting go of judgment, but also shifting your perspective.
Mhm.
I think maybe that was Sarah. That was just like, you know, everything is terrible, but I can change my attitude, you know, and that's really all we can do. That's like really the only way we can change anything that's happening, is how we look at it or how we take it in. So you guys sort of knew what I was going to talk about. So thank you. That was really cool. And this is just something that I often talk about when I get into this whole idea of operating by like or dislike in the preferential attachment version of love versus the universal understanding. All of the things that we have learned to let go of, and probably all of you have experienced this in the past year, is we can't have the outcomes we want, so we have to let them go. And so all of these are obstacles to satisfaction when we define love by preference, by immediate gratification, by all of those things. And so maybe these are some of the lessons that we're getting out of this time. So I think I'm gonna be finishing up here. And one of the things that I've talked about a lot, my ex-husband doesn't love this, but I've always told my children is once they got past a certain age that their Jewish identity and affiliation is up to them. And I have always believed that I need to know who I am and why I love being Jewish and what I find as a connector to my ancestry, my heritage. And I choose to go to synagogue. I choose to be part of a community. And I really believe that it's my role as a parent to see them as whole individuals separate from me, who have their own sensibility and their own way of interacting with our traditions. And I need to give them the space to do that. And so as we come to this very self-defining holiday of Passover, I invite you to explore how you feel about all these things, because we all have children for different reasons and see our role as parents in different ways. And we have to know what that is in order to do them justice. So I think that if we do a good job of finding our words and making sense of things for ourselves, that's an example that's modeling to them how they can do it too. And that's it. So that's my presentation for all of you. And I think I am just hitting up on an hour, so I don't want to keep anybody up too late. But what questions do you have, or any concluding thoughts that you'd like to throw into the mix?
I think this was great. I really enjoyed this. It made me think, and it kept me interested, and I want to thank you for that. I am a writer. I write young adult novels, and I have a children's picture book too. But I try to write every day. It tends to be rants about things that are bothering me.
Okay.
But I think it is important to write. And even though I say that, I don't always do it, but I truly believe that. I think that the questions you asked were really insightful, and they made me, I took screenshots of various things, and I plan to talk to my husband about them, because I think that especially the stuff you said about like teaching your children like that, like showing that you care about Torah so that they'll care about Torah. I mean, that's a very big thing for us. And I really appreciated everything you talked about. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad. Thank you, Beth. And I'd love to read your book. So I'm going to look.
Well, thank you. That wasn't why I said it. I just wanted to say that like I understand the purpose and importance of writing.
Thank you. Yeah. Even if you don't define yourself as a writer, it can be a great way to work through emotions, to make sense of situations. I mean, I really think I'm a writer to make sense of the world. And every day I need to figure out how to make sense of different things. And I just want to get published, but you don't have to. You can just write to make sense of things and get your emotions out too. It's a very cathartic, healthy way to do that, to process. Thank you, Beth.
I have similar sentiments. I want to thank you for just kind of everything that you showed us. And I would say the most useful thing for me was definitely like the prompts and like kind of to focus a little bit. Cause I think similar to what Beth said, if I do sit down to write, I enjoy it, but I do a lot of just like ranting or like just like mind dumping, just like these are all the things going on. And I think like finding a way to make sense of things could be a little more meaningful than just kind of the daily download.
Great.
So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Anybody else?
I will echo a thank you to you, Lynn. I thought it was wonderful. Like I said in the beginning, I really wanted to do this mostly because I felt like I needed to do this, and I was like, maybe other people will do this with me. So if you enjoyed, we did record it, and we'll have a link for the recording. And we do still have some journals left. I'd love to get them in more hands. So if you think like a girlfriend or somebody else you know might like this and benefit from sitting down and really starting to think about these things and just, maybe start journaling or whatever, reach out to me, and we'll get more info out there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really a delight and a fun topic to explore, and you guys helped me to make sense of things too. So thank you.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice to meet you all.
I hope everybody comes away feeling uplifted. The point is, to think and to like feel better at the end, because it's been a year.
It's been a year.
So, there's a lot of good to take away, and I hope that, this helped.
Yeah. Lindsay,
So.
Yeah, thank you very much.
oh, you're welcome. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks. Nice to meet you. Bye.
Bye.